Hey everyone, welcome to the Parts Girl podcast. I'm super excited to be interviewing Joe today. Welcome, Joe.
Hi, Kaylee. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and Joe, just quickly tell everyone who you are and who you're with.
Sure. Yeah, I'm Joe Gibson. I'm Director of Marketing at InteliChek. And
Great. And
InteliChek,
I'm really, yeah, go ahead.
and InteliChek is a fixed ops data solutions company. But
Yeah, and I'm not super familiar, so this is going to be a learning experience, and I'm going to have lots of questions for you. So let's just like go right into it, because I'm sure people are like, if they don't know what you guys do,
yeah,
like, what do you guys do?
yeah, for sure. InteliChek is, as I said, a fixed ops data solutions company, which is a bit of a mouthful. But what it really comes down to, what our sort of bread and butter service is competitive pricing analysis reports. So we've worked with OEMs, dealer groups, individual dealers, helping them identify their service pricing competitive, how competitive their pricing really is. So that's been our main service for a few decades. We started in 1997.
Wow.
So, yeah, and we've been doing that working, a lot of our clients have been corporate level, but we've also done one-on-one, work with dealers. Again, usually looking at what their competitors are actually telling their customers in terms of what their pricing is, and then we help them identify, basically where they are in their market, and they can make adjustments to their pricing strategies. But on top of that, we also do performance reviews, evaluations, largely like phone etiquette scoring jobs. So, we help people identify weaknesses in their own service departments and when it comes to messaging and customer interaction. So that is our main services. We also have a lot of promotional tools available with our software that I guess it would be the logical conclusion of learning where you are in the market, learning where you're favorably priced, and then taking that message to your customers. So we help dealers
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah, and I think that it's a lot of that what you guys do is a lot. And I think that, staying on top of that in the dealer world is just a lot of work, and not having the tools and the data to really see what's going on in your market can make it challenging. So it's great that you guys have a service out there to help them. How long have you been with them with IntelliCheck?
It's coming up 8 years or so now since I got on board with it. Sort of started just at the bottom, actually originally hired because they needed somebody who spoke French, and we had some clients in Quebec. And so that was maybe part of the reason why I came on board. I think they like that. And then, yeah, I've been with the company ever since. And it's a moderately sized company. So, they definitely promote from within. And I've just been learning a ton since then.
So you weren't originally brought in for sales then, or
No, not
yes?
originally. No, definitely more, I would say, on the admin side of things, clients, working with clients that were already on board and making sure that we were giving them what they wanted. So, yeah, that was sort of where I began, and then have worked my way into sales and marketing since then.
Yeah, I remember when we first talked, we have some similar, our paths were very similar, where I started in that kind of role with PartsEdge, and then
Yeah.
later moved into the sales and marketing. So I think it's a great way to start out with a company, because then you get to really like learn the customers and how we're supporting them, and all of the like, the details.
Absolutely. I was lucky enough to get the opportunities to just absorb and learn from being in conversations with, I would consider my mentor, the founder of the company. His name is David Swan. And he had for years just, gave me the opportunity to learn so much. And I think recognized that I wouldn't say I had the background in marketing, but I had a strong interest in it and a strong interest in sales. I come from a family of salespeople, I would say. So it's sort of in my blood a little bit. And I think that it just, I think he recognized that I had, an aptitude for that, and, gave me the chance to do it, which was great. And I'm so thankful.
Yeah, I love sales and marketing. What is it about the marketing aspect that you were so intrigued or interested in?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's a chance for creativity there that I really responded to. There's also, I think, when you're dealing with marketing, it is sort of it's an interesting challenge, especially with a data-based company. There's certain products that you're trying to sell that are maybe a little more interesting than data at times, and the sexiness of data isn't really something that we people deal with, and so it's a challenge. But I think that I think of things in sort of an emotional sense. So when you're doing marketing, it's a lot of storytelling in a sense, and that's always been something that I really respond to. And so I think that trying to find the story, trying to find what it means to people is something that I always, it's sort of a lens that I guess I view the world through. So I think it fits what I do. And I think marketing is really at its core about that. It's about delivering a message that has a story that means something to people.
Yeah, exactly. I can relate because I don't know about you guys, we didn't have a lot of marketing. There was no
Yeah.
even marketing department. So
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. I think that, 10 years ago, we were more, referrals, word of mouth. We
Hmm.
had contracts with people that, we could just use that to get other contracts. And now it's a little bit different. I think that, we've embraced the sort of where, the industry has gone, with people just doing a lot of business on LinkedIn, even
Yeah.
using video, using media to our advantage. And yeah, we've definitely, I would say, in the last year or two just really kind of gone headfirst into that, and it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of like learning. I'm sure just like you, where you started a podcast, it's you learn a lot and you learn what works, and we're still learning, but I see just so much potential in it, and it's exciting what we can do now with technology, but also yeah, I think that there definitely was a lack of that in the company before. But, the company was established enough that, probably similar to with what you're doing with PartsEdge, the company had clients before you came in. So there's maybe a little
Yep.
less pressure on us to do these things. But at the same time, maybe we have a little bit of freedom to try these things, and trying a podcast. And we also have a podcast that we're launching. We
Yep.
launched a few months ago, or I guess it's longer than that. It was probably about the beginning of the year. So just,
Okay.
trying to get our
Feels
name
like a
out
couple
there.
months ago.
Yeah, well, we're
Yeah.
we're slowly growing our listenership right now, and trying out some different things. We started just as an audio only podcast, trying to get into video now, and seeing that it does make a difference.
It does. And what's the name of the podcast?
Yeah, it's called the Multi-Point Inspection Podcast, and it is hosted by a fellow named Brandon Barnett, and he's fantastic. He loves to do his sort of documentary style approach to things, where he does your interviews, but he also loves to even drive out to places, and bring his I forget what he calls it, a gimbal, and his GoPro and stuff, and try to put it all together and cut a little mini documentary around whatever topic or person he's interviewing. So we try to have it be its own thing. I think that the cool thing is, in this industry, or in the fixed ops department, there's a decent amount of people who are making content and podcasts, and they all have their own flavor. So, I think we're just trying to figure out our own way of doing things, and it's been interesting. So yeah, if people haven't already listened, definitely encourage them to check it out. It's on every streaming service, but also YouTube for video content, and LinkedIn for video content.
Yeah, and I was on the show and it was a really
Yes.
I love the format and the way that you guys are doing it. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
be sure to check it out, whoever's listening. And I want to go back to when we were talking about marketing. And just like you come from, it sounds like you come from a lot of sales people in your family. So
Yeah.
what does that mean? Like was your dad a
What does that mean?
salesperson?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
means, I guess, if I could paint a picture of myself as a child, it was a lot of him driving us to soccer practice, and also talking on the phone trying to close a sale. And you just hear this, and it would go from, maybe my dad was a little bit of an old school salesman, where he would talk to us a certain way, and then as soon as the phone goes on, it's about 50% louder, and he could turn that on, which, yeah, it was something that I was exposed to, and his dad did that. They were in actually the roofing business, so it wasn't automotive,
Okay.
but And
But still,
yeah, and my brother, same thing. He's actually still in that industry. So I feel like that was a big thing in my family. And my dad always really embraced that and would, any opportunity he had to speak somewhere publicly, he would just jump on it. And yeah, I don't know if I'm quite what he was, but, trying on the hat.
it's in your blood a little bit.
It is,
Oh
yeah.
man. Yeah. No, I feel that because I remember picking up my little brother from something and I got a call and then I just like flipped that switch and he was like, you sound like so like professional and like, like you know what you're talking. I'm like, well, I hope I know what I'm
I
talking
hope so.
about. But,
Yeah, right?
but it's
Yeah.
just so funny
I
how you can
think
just like flip that switch.
Yeah, you do. And I think something that I've noticed in your show is that you do that, but then you also don't just completely stop being who you are. And I think that's really appreciated. And I think that
Oh,
comes through in what you do. And I think just, I think like when I said my dad is maybe he was an old school salesman, he also brought his own personality into things. And I remember when he retired, we heard stories from people that I had never heard before, telling them that he introduced them to all these things that had nothing to do with the industry that he was in, but he just brought his own personality, and it rubbed off on people. And I think that's a major part of it is being yourself, but also like, yeah, just being something or somebody that people, I think trust goes a long way. And
yes.
when you are, just who you are, and you speak clearly, hopefully, and know what you're talking about, it's, that's kind of what you need to do. I mean, I don't think that you need to be so aggressive these days with trying to sell
No.
something.
No,
Yeah.
just be yourself, build a relationship. That's what I've really loved about the podcast and just getting out there on LinkedIn because I'm just like, I'm able to be like a person and not
Yeah,
just constantly like, hey, do you want to talk to me about this service? Because like
exactly.
you, it's like not the sexiest thing to like sell or like, how do I paint this picture of something that's so like in behind the scenes?
Oh, absolutely.
So,
Yeah, it's not something that, people are lining up to just hear about all the time, but I think, you find ways to talk to people about it where it does mean something to them. And usually that just starts with a conversation, learning about who they are, what their business is, what their needs are, and then, you go from there just to try to see if what, we have to offer fits what they're looking for. The nice thing with InteliChek is that, when it comes to data, we can essentially capture what people are looking for. It's not always so set in stone. So we have, a lot of different programs that we do that are pretty customized, I would say. So, a lot of
so
that
it's a
comes from.
matter of, it sounds like a matter of like finding out what their struggles are and what they're like
Absolutely.
looking for, and then,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I think the main thing that we go for is competitive pricing, but that isn't always what people are looking for. They might have a handle of that already. So, there's a lot of other things that we do studies on. And yeah, it all starts with that conversation and just learning and trying to understand what the need is, and then coming up with a way of uncovering that data for people.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite, like a more recent success story that you've had with a dealership or anything?
Yeah, the one thing that I'm really excited about with InteliChek, so like I've said, we do a lot of these competitive pricing analysis where we go out, we usually if we're working with an OEM or a dealer group, we have, all of their dealers, and then we will collect pricing on their competitors. And, it can range from, if a dealership is in a small town, we might collect a handful of competitors around them. And we try to, give them, if they're looking for, pricing on a certain vehicle and service, we try to give them apples to apples comparisons, and we can show them, where they are in the market. But the exciting thing is when they are favorably priced, we have some really great tools where they can get this message across to their customers. So we call it InteliShare. It's basically three sides of InteliShare. One of them is the InteliAds, which are basically printable flyers that they can put around in their dealership. It shows their price, the competition's price, and it gets across in a really simple way that they're competitively priced, and the customers in the dealership can see this and just get a sense that, okay, because there is this huge perception in the industry still that dealers are more expensive. We've done studies in the past where we had a focus group where people basically thought dealers were twice as expensive. And that is not true. I mean, we've been doing studies for so long where, yeah, dealers can be more expensive. I think on average it's about 20% more, but even then we see it over and over again that really depends on the service. And for, maintenance items like oil changes and wheel alignments, a lot of dealerships are very competitively priced. So they can use our tools. Like I said, there's the flyers. We also have integration with service drive TVs and waiting room TVs. And we work with a number of different companies who handle that. One of them that we love is a company called AutoNet TV, who handle a lot of those. They do a lot of educational videos that play in dealerships. So shout out to them. Yeah, and we had a dealer who started using some of these things and came back to us and said, I had 13 people come up to me in my dealership and just tell me how kind of shocked they were that we had competitive pricing like this. And it all came from just seeing our promotional tool in the dealership. And that was pretty great to hear, because this was, in a matter of, I think, a few weeks of him having these promotional tools out there. And just to tag on to that, the third tool of InteliShare is called the IntelliWidget. And this is something that integrates with dealers' websites. And that's something that I'm very excited about. It's probably our newest tool. Okay. And I am so excited for dealers to be using this because, as you know, a lot of people, their journey starts online these days, and
yes, it does.
They want as much information as possible. So, there's some dealers who are on board with this already, and hats off to them. And then there's, other websites that I'll look at, and there's virtually no pricing information available on their website. So it's definitely something that I think we're trying to, I guess, break the myth that dealers are more expensive, and then also trying to break that myth to the dealers themselves, because I think they sometimes don't know at times, and so they just assume that they aren't. And it's quite interesting when you can come back and show them that, no, you actually are, and you should be showing this off. And, even further than that, there's times where they're so competitively priced, where they're so much lower, where we say, wow, like, okay, look at your competition. You might be selling your oil change for $35. Great, you're bringing in people, but they're selling it for $50. Like, if you were to split the difference there, I mean, you could close that profit gap there. And it's interesting what people don't know, but I think there's a bit of a reluctance to know these things at time. I think that I sometimes look at, what we do is a little bit of like a doctor visit, where it's a little bit of a checkup. And, people always get a little anxiety about that. And, but also, you kind of need to do it. It's so important to know. Yeah.
It is important to know and look at all the pricing and to see what other people are doing. And not to mention just having it on the website is so important. Like, if we have to put ourselves in their shoes and how we look at anything, like, we don't want to buy anything or schedule an appointment without knowing what it's going to cost.
I think with our generation, just to use that term loosely, I think, we're of the same generation. I think we just expect it, I think. And so, it's one thing to pick up a phone and call people to get pricing, which, obviously still happens, but why not put it on your website and then save yourself the phone call too? Because as we know, there's not always enough people answering the phones to begin with. So
yeah, I've got lots of stories about that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So,
and I think, it's really important to have it. And you know what? When people of our generation, because we're assuming we're in the same generation, always say like, it's us. I remember hearing a couple presentations where they talked about I don't even want to say the generation because I don't want to get it wrong, but the ones that are older, the older generation, they're the ones that actually want more of this tech than actually we do.
That's
so it's
funny.
like it's all of the generations. So to just blame it on us, it's everyone.
You shouldn't blame it on us, but no, I think that's true. It's just convenience, right? And
it's convenience.
And it also just, I think that it is something that dealerships struggle with, because there is that perception out there that, they do need to overcome. And so why not do it at the first, step of a customer's journey? Like, don't let it get down to them, really, coming into your store and having no idea. And yeah, you could talk to them about it then, but I think that it would go a long way, and, it would change the perception out there.
It really would. And just getting the people in. And I think that I was going to ask you a question. Keep doing this with my thing. But no, I think it's what you guys are doing is great. And I hope that a lot of people hear this and reach out with questions. But I wanted, before we wrap it up, just to throw in those personal questions I like to ask.
Sure. Yeah, no problem.
Well, and this one could be work or personal, but it's one that I like to ask because it really kind of shows who you are. And it's about the challenges that we face in life, because everyone goes through challenges. Is there anything that's specific that hangs out or stands out in your life that was like a big challenge that you had to go through, and like, what was that like?
Ooh, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I don't know how personal to go here. There's challenges.
Whatever you want.
I think, yeah, I mean, similar to you, I didn't enter the business thinking that I would be in front of a camera even. So, something like this is a challenge, but I embrace it. So, it hasn't been too difficult for me to do this, but at the same time, it's not maybe it wasn't where I initially saw myself in the company, but when there was the opportunity to get into sales and get into, spreading the word about InteliChek, I guess I felt quite passionate about it. So, that was something that I kind of just took on. And that was, there's challenges there, but overall, I think it's been a good thing for me personally. I think it's built my confidence, but also a good thing for our business as well. It seems to be, making a difference and raising awareness about what we do. On personal levels, I mean, moving houses recently, not fun.
Don't tell me that. I'm moving next week.
Oh, wow. Yes. Right. Well, good luck with that. I mean, I think, it's stressful, but hopefully once you settle in, you just tell yourself that it was the best decision that you could have made. So yeah, good luck.
Oh gosh, I hope so.
Yes. But I've done that many times. So I've gone from city to city and traveled long distances and moves, and it's difficult, but
it's difficult. Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully you just find yourself in a better place though at the end of it.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. And luckily, I'm not traveling too far. I'm just
That's good.
20 minutes to a different town, so it's not that far.
Right.
But it's still stressful.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know what you mean. Like, getting in front of the camera, it's not really what you see yourself doing as a salesperson. But I think that, honestly, I hate putting like COVID out there, but like it really shifted the way that we do business and how we connect with people. And it's almost opened just a new way of doing sales and marketing, which has been really, really fun to learn and try new things, because we're all just figuring it out.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah, good for you for embracing it.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, it seems to be going okay, but we'll see. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that we're, like you said, trying to find new ways of doing things right now, and probably COVID did kick that off. So it's great. And I think that there's a lot of innovation in the industry. And I don't know if I said this before, but there's just so much opportunity for people to find their own way of doing things. And like you, and I think, there's several other podcasts and just to throw a few names out there, I mean, even like the Fixed Ops Roundtable, they've got their style,
Yes.
There's so many other ones that are great. And I just
what
think
the
that
WTF?
yeah,
What
for
the
sure.
Fixed Ops,
Yeah.
they're good.
I know I'm blanking all the other ones that I watch, but
No, I'm thinking of SDL. They're a good one. They're like
Okay.
they're more like a group. They're not so much a podcast, but they're a group that meets every week.
Right.
There's just so many resources for fixed ops now, which is like incredible. Okay, so this is a fun question I like to ask. How would your grandma describe what you do?
Wow. She would probably be like, he deals with data and cars. I think most of my family has a question about that, and I try to explain it as I did here. I use terms like competitive pricing analysis, and they probably go, okay. But yeah, hopefully they would just be like, yeah, he's a sales and marketing guy just like his dad or something.
Something like that. That's cool. I know my family's always like they think that the company makes parts or we sell parts, and I'm like, no, it's none of that.
Oh, that's
Maybe I'm
funny.
a bad salesperson because they don't get it.
Well, it's
But
tough.
I
It's
think
tough
some
when
of
they're
them
not
are.
in the industry, but it's
It
yeah.
is
Hopefully, the
tough.
people who are in the industry can make sense of it.
I think so.
I think so.
Okay, so this one's my last fun one. What is your daily driver? And if you don't want to
Oh
share
wow.
that, have like a favorite car.
Well, yeah, no, I drive I feel weird because we work with so many clients, and now I feel like I'm picking one in front
Uh-oh.
of no, it's okay. I don't think they're gonna mind because yeah, I drive a Yukon actually.
Oh,
Big family
nice.
car. I used to live
A
up in the
family car.
mountains and had a lot of snow where we lived, so it was very handy to drive a Yukon. But
Yep.
maybe the favorite car that I own was an back number of years ago. I got a 1985 Volvo. What was it called? A 244 DL, and it was
Wow.
an old tank of a car, no AC. And when my wife and I had our first child, or when my wife was pregnant, the car stalled in the middle of the road, and she told me we have to sell this. And so that was the end of that car. But I really enjoy driving that car.
Sweet. And I always say too, like, because there's so many different manufacturers, and I'm like, I love them all.
Yes, I love them all. Me too.
I love them all. Just, I wish I could drive them all. Like, if you want to
Yeah.
give me a demo and I could just try them all.
Absolutely. One of my favorite things is going to like a different city and renting a car and getting to try something out.
Oh, I know. Getting to
Yes.
rent yes, you get to try all yeah, that's always fun.
Yeah.
Well, it's been fun having you on the show. I hope you had fun. I
Great.
think, did we mention this? This was your first podcast?
We didn't.
Right?
I don't think we did. But thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about InteliChek and a little bit about
Yep.
myself. So it's been great. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to reach out to him, find him on LinkedIn. We'll have links in the show notes. And so, yeah, thank you so much, Joe, for coming on the show.
Great. Thanks, Kaylee, so much.
Thank you for joining us. PartsEdge, the power tool for your parts department. We hope you're leaving feeling motivated, challenged, and inspired.